That one belongs to the stuff that was already with.
Hey everyone. Sorry about the music. I know it sounded like you were sitting in the lobby of Massage Envy, but um, I don't know how that music happened. But anyway, we'll have it more spunky next time. Welcome everyone. It's good to see all your faces. Ben, it's great to see you. I always get nervous when my guests are coming in from different places. Ben is joining us from DC today. And Ben, it's great to have you. Hop on, unmute, and tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're located, and what you've been doing for the past 10, 11 years.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Don, so much for having me. And good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are, everyone. My name is Ben Smith. I've been in the Washington, D.C. area for almost 11 years. Actually, a little bit over 11 years now, 11 years and 3 weeks. So it was Memorial Day 2014 when I moved to the Washington area. I'm actually vacationing right now in Colonial Williamsburg. So big history nerd as well, along with been doing social media for organizations, nonprofits, news organizations, and authors for the last 11 years, basically helping people grow and helping people monetize and help people get their contracts and work with authors and journalists across the United States to show them and kind of teach them how to take their brand and take what they're trying to do into their own hands and get that story or get that book published or get that contract. So that's what I'm really here to talk to you guys about today.
Thanks, Ben. You, as you alluded, you've worked with a host of writers, communicators, authors. What are two common mistakes or misunderstandings about social media?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Actually, I have a little bit of a slide deck on that, actually. Don, if you don't mind me just pulling it up real quick.
Yeah, go ahead. You
Sure,
should be able to do it.
absolutely.
My AI assistant, Donnie, yeah, set that up.
Yeah. So can everyone see me out screen?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So, just like I said in the background, a little about me, I've been helping authors for a while kind of navigate these areas. And one of the things that I think a lot of that I see, and not just writers, but across the area, is what to do and what you should or someone should be doing on social media. And one of the mistakes I see a lot is a lot of writers just and authors that I work with trying to think of social media as kind of the only way to like promote themselves. Social media is exclusively used to promote your brand, promote your work, tell your colleagues about that next, writing convention you're going to be at, or the next thing you're working on, and really treating it as kind of a advertising channel than really a place to talk about writing, a place to engage people, and also kind of what we're posting. And people need to think, and authors especially need to think about why they're posting it and kind of what they're posting. Sometimes different audiences and different platforms react to things a little bit better. And so what you might necessarily post on Facebook or LinkedIn might be different than what you post on Instagram or Twitter. Um, Speaking of that posting, we talk about purpose a lot and kind of what that purpose is and how much we need to be involved on those social media platforms. So, to give you kind of a consistency idea of what I've seen work best with people I've worked with in the past and continue to work with, are about 2 to 4 posts a week on your main feed. This Facebook and Instagram, which have the stories and reels, 3 to 5 there, kind of showing different things, and about 1 to 2 reels per month, which is a little bit longer form content. Think video, think talking to the camera, or like kind of behind the scenes as well. But that's kind of what I've seen so far. Does anyone have kind of any questions on that?
Ben, the one
Yes.
question I had, just sort of generally for all of us,
Yeah.
is can you post too often?
Yes, absolutely. So there comes a time when you need to think about your audience, not only your audience, but your audience size. You want to think about it kind of like some people would think about the market. There's an idea of oversaturation and undersaturation. So the worst thing you can do is not post. The worst thing you can do is take time off from posting. I'm not talking like a week, but the longer you take time to post or between posts, the less the algorithm works on your page. Think of the algorithm as kind of a trawler, if you will, something that scans your social media probably every couple seconds and kind of always evaluates. It's a algorithmic function on the back end of almost every single social media space. And so it treats it as kind of like you had to find a sweet spot when you're posting and how many times you post. So posting too much, Twitter is not as bad if you're on Twitter or Blue Sky, whichever one you prefer. But that one, it's kind of supposed to be a rapid reaction, rapid response. So that one's not as bad. But the bigger platforms, Facebook, the one that's more algorithmic, like Facebook Meta, who owns Facebook and Instagram, you've really got to treat that as if you're giving kind of content hits here and there. I would say, as this slide shows, 3 to 5 stories per week. Also, on the lower end, if you have a smaller audience, anything under 1,000, I would say, people following you, I would say maybe 2 to 3 on maximum. If you do have a large following, there are some clients I've had that have had one of the largest pages I ever ran was about 10 million a week on Facebook, and they had, they could post pretty much 12 to 13 times a day. So audience size does have that. But for you as authors, because you're also writing, you're also going and meeting with people, you're meeting with publicists, you got to take that time management into place and make sure you're not overdoing it. Great content is good. Posting pictures, here and there is fine, but you can definitely have a post and it will show. If you go look at your analytics, or you need someone to look at your analytics, that's kind of where I come in. It can tell you based on, how often you're posting, how it's going to do. So give your post what I call room to breathe. Never post something also within 48, never repost something within 48 hours of itself. So you have an event coming up you're going to be at, or you're sponsoring, or you're having a book signing. Definitely worth promoting, obviously, on your page. Engage those people in conversation in the comments. Post about it once or twice, but don't do it within 48 hours, because Facebook especially will punish you. You'll see about a 10 to 15% decline on your reach, which is, the people who are seeing your post.
Ben, that's really helpful. And by the way, be thinking of questions you may have for Ben. and just send it to me in the chat. I'll catch it and ask you to unmute. Instagram seems to be a major forum for authors.
Mhm.
Help us understand, help me understand, but
Yes.
authors with me. When do you have post, story, reel, and live, and you've referenced
Mhm.
some of them here.
Yes.
When is it appropriate to use one over the other?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So I would say that when it comes to bigger announcements, bigger things, um, a combination. You have to think of it that way. So, for example, I'm working with one person right now, and she's in the process of negotiating with, um, uh, getting her final negotiation for her manuscript. That's going through the phases, and one of the things that she and I always discuss is, what should I talk about, what themes, and when should I use what. So, I would say, always have stuff that not only is about your content, but also you're selling yourself as an author to your audience. So one of the things I would say is fun, kind of behind the scenes or funny stories or anecdotes to elude your audience to kind of you as a human, because we do also want to humanize you. You're not only an author, you're a human being behind the camera, behind the scenes. So short, funny things or clever things or something that shows them a little bit about what your process is and what you do. I would say that would probably be good for stories, 3 to 5 a week, updates on things, small updates, oh, I'm traveling this week. It could be personal. You don't have to keep it completely professional. In fact, what social media has done is kind of destroyed that boundary sometimes between professional and personal. And so I would say what you would really want to focus on there is my client, for example, she does a lot of traveling. So she posts from the airport, she posts, food pics. So stories only last 24 hours. And, they can be taken down early. You think you don't like it, change it. And I would say that what you would really want to do is focus on the personal, so more so on the stories and a few life updates here and there, updates on your book here and there, more updates in the book and more updates on major things. For example, hey, I'm writing something new. Here's an announcement, or hey, I've completed my goal here on the book. Don't be afraid to let people in behind the scenes. That really does, I can't stress enough, personalize you and show that you're working towards something. And I would say that new big additions to the book or more larger announcements. That's something that you would have to gauge and work with, and talk about your kitchen cabinet, your group, your family, and or an advisor or someone that can come in and say, hey, that's kind of a more major update. So big life updates, big personal updates also could be a post, but also don't be afraid to mix in that personal side. So big personal update, maybe once a week, something like that. It really does take a lot of working on the craft and working back and forth and seeing what you're comfortable with. So I would say a lot of the times the behind the scenes stuff or the nice little update here and there would be a post or a story. Definitely encourage. I always encourage people to be a little bit more personal, a little more humanized on the story side. Reels are great for talking about what's upcoming on your book. If you're there, I would say face to camera, kind of what you see now all these influencers doing where they're talking to the camera about what's next. Give updates here and there about what you're doing, what you're working on. Could be a weekly update. Your fans are there for you. They're already bought in, they're following you. And it's also a great way to reach out and see if people are interested more in what you're doing. So I'd say reels, maybe one a week if you're just starting out, two if you have a larger audience. But it's a combination of all of those things. So I've seen it's worked really well also for like one of my authors does a personal update every week about what she's working on. She also does a lot of mom blogs and things like that. So family stuff that's going on. And she sometimes gets very personal, and it's a brand that works for her. So again, take into the mindset what you're working on and what your goals are and put it out there. But I would say kind of in a shorter way, stories, obviously more personal, more frequent, but definitely if you have a big announcement, go live. If you have a big announcement, go live, do a reel on it, do everything for that one. But it does take some tuning, getting used to, and figuring out what your goals are. So that way people and you can work on what your social media brand is. There's no obviously magic bullet for all this. It all works differently with audience sizes and personal determination about which one does. But I would say, fun story here and there, a post maybe once a week, an actual feed post on something that you're working on. And then maybe the story can go along with it with little updates on how that's going. a reel for sure about maybe once or twice a month on bigger updates, and then live on the biggest updates, a book launch, a signing, at a convention, or at, talking to someone, talk about what you talked about. There's all different varieties to do it for.
Ben, Callie has a question coming
Of
from
course.
Georgia. Callie, go
Hi,
ahead
Callie.
now.
Hey, Ben.
Hi.
Hey,
Nice to meet you.
you too. Okay, so I'm at that point right now where I'm trying to connect with like bookstagrammers or even other authors as we start to like ask for blurbs. What are
Yes.
your like kind of I mean, I know there's like the emotional, make a good personal connection and don't just ask for stuff. But like what are some of your technical pieces of advice for connecting for other folks? So so the DMs don't just go to the abyss.
Absolutely. Well, I would say you need to start cultivating that early on. So when it comes to this kind of network and networking on Instagram or DMs or Twitter or whatever app or platform you're using, my first advice would be start following them way before you want to make the connection. You got to think about it long term strategically. Engage with their content. You know, Also, if you see something they like, reshare it, repost it. You have to, on social media, you got to think of it like brands and influencers almost. A brand is not going to simply just, unless you're Kim Kardashian, reach out and say, hey, we want to do this for you, or hey, we want to work with you. It's a give and take. It's you scratch your back, I'll scratch, back and forth. It's a lot of cultivating early on these relationships and engaging with their content. And then if you like something, encouraging them to re-engage with you, tag them in something. If you thought of something of them and you're kind of getting that connection going, don't just tag them out of the blue, but definitely be engaging, or even start by sending something they think they like in a DM. Say, hey, this, I was working on this thing and saw this, and you might like to see this. There's ways to start engaging. Some of the authors and journalists I work with closely, we started with Twitter DMs back in 2012. And now, we're in a group chat, and I'm on some group chats with some of the top political journalists in the DC area, because my history, I used to work for some newsrooms. So working with that and trying to cultivating, if you see someone you like what they're doing, engage with their content, and then try to engage them slowly, a DM here and there. Think about it strategically. I know it seems kind of skeevy and sketchy, and it feels like you're kind of like going in and networking and there's an angle. But at the end of the day, you might not only get a good person to not only, work with, but also a friend at the end of the day, which is even more important. The other ways to do this, obviously, are going to different workshops, conventions, sharing your social media with these people you meet in real life. And that's another way to do it. But it is really difficult to get, in that DM area. But the best way to get their attention is to engage with their content. In fact, two of my friends in the social media world got married because they started DMing each other on Twitter. So it is possible. But the way is they start doing that is definitely start engaging with each other through DMs and sharing mutual things and mutual interests they like. So, for example, they're writing on something and you see like, hey, I thought of you. Not anything creepy or weird, but definitely engage for a few weeks or months before you start doing that. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Of course.
Bradley is joining us from Texas. Go ahead, Bradley, with your question.
Hey,
Hi, Bradley.
hey Ben, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I was actually in Austin a few weeks ago.
Oh, shoot. Next
Yeah.
time,
Yeah, exactly.
DM me.
Of course.
So I've been working with Dawn. It's great. I finished my first book at
Congratulations.
the end of last year. And so we're shopping for publishers. So
Mhm.
I also have a speaking, I do keynotes, and I have a bit of a platform for activations that I do. So I have a audience in another way and a bit of a history in another way. So my post generally, I post weekly. I do a fun post, just something fun I'm doing.
Mhm.
I do a static post that's kind of maybe a quote or something I'm saying, and then I do something
Absolutely.
about a real post that's more towards my speaking and which is connected. The speaking stuff I do is the same.
Absolutely.
So in terms of the question I have is, I've not secured a publisher, so my book is a year or so away, possibly, right? So what's, right now I have mentioned a couple times, very few, hey, I've
Mhm.
finished my book. And then I said, oh, we're hoping for some things, but it's a little bit weird when there's how much you're actually talking about the book. I'm talking about my content, what I do. How do I
Mhm.
balance content and timing to talk
Mhm.
about the book that you have no idea when it's going to be in the public's hands?
Absolutely. And that's actually something I'm working on with someone right now. So we sat down and spoke with the person I'm working with. I think it was last November, and she's actually in the same boat that you are, same timeline. And so what we have done is every once in a while, like you said, we'll mention, hey, we have this book coming up. But one of the things we're doing behind the scenes is we're saying, okay, she's working on a book. She's worked on 2 books. One's Traveling with Anxiety. She's a mom and she has a blended family. She has 3 kids of her own and then 6 adopted kids, all with different areas of struggle. One of them has severe Down syndrome. Another one has cerebral palsy. And she works with a bunch of kids, a youth in her area. So she's writing a book about that and traveling with those kids, and also what it was like when she decided to take on these kids and work with her husband. So she's worked on a family book and a traveling book. And so what I said to her was, hey, what is your goal? Because you've kind of mentioned yourself about the timeline. You have it, it's going out. And so what we've done is we've mentioned, as you said, the book a few times, but we started taking core themes of those books. There were 10 kind of core themes we parsed across in the 2 books. And we started working and melding our content to start preemptively getting our audience on board with those concepts. So for example, one of them is, and she's very personal about this and she's very open about it, is the struggle with her marriage at the beginning when she decided to work with her husband to take on these kids with some extra challenges and, adopt them. And so it was a lot of, very personal videos about the adoption process, about living with kids with severe disabilities and severe issues. And we've kind of melded that into how she's working. So we're priming the audience to be ready without even really telling them, and changing our tune just a little by little to talk about these issues. So that way, when the big announcements are coming and, we're here on our book schedule, we're here on our book tour, people are going to go, oh yeah, she's been talking about that subconsciously now for a year and a half, and the audience is primed, if that makes sense.
That's great. And one other quick question: when you mentioned about the live videos, as opposed to extended reels or
Yes.
videos, I realize I don't do enough of those. But is that basically just like a 15-minute hopping on and talking for a while, or what? I don't know the parameters of using the live on a regular basis.
Yeah. Well, that's a great thing because the parameters for each person's goal are different. So, the clients I work with, they do about 3 static posts a week, and then they do, and it's also takes some getting used to. They do reels that are face to camera. So, if you've ever seen those social media influencers, having worked in politics in the past, the political commentators that have their phone out and talking directly to the camera, you'll never believe what this person did. It takes some getting used to. But you guys can do that too. There are ways to do that. And then there, of course, the live wage, which are obviously the big announcements, the big things, or once a week, depending on how comfortable you are with it. I would say for live, I've had clients go live and do live broadcast. I had one do a 2-hour, Q&A and just answer questions for 2 hours. There's different ways you can set that up, but again, it depends on your goals. But for live, you can go live as long as you can have a decent conversation, get your message out. I would say between 5 minutes until, honestly, if you want to do a 3-hour Q&A, more power to you. That's a long Q&A, but there's no really set parameters in terms of how long it should be. But I would say the minimum, if you're going to go live, you need to make it obviously something really important, really big, and have that buy-in from your audience so that they're engaged. Whether it be asking questions, like kind of like what we're doing here, or other areas, or asking about the book or asking about what's next. But I would say minimum 5 minutes, because usually when it comes to this is a different section of Facebook monetization purposes. So if you eventually get to that point where you have enough people to start getting paid for your content, think Mr. Beast, think that kind of stuff. You want to be at a minimum about 5 minutes, and that's usually what does the best on most platforms, is a 3.5 to 5 minute minimum. But I would say, you can go as long or as live as you want, because obviously it'll be there, it'll be saved, but definitely nothing less than 5 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you.
And we got a lot of questions popping up here. We'll go to Tara in Canada. Tara, did you disappear?
I had to find the off mute button on my phone. Sorry about that, Ben. So I have a lot of friends who are very active on social media, and they tell me all these rumored algorithm tricks, and I'm curious if you know if any of them are true or not. One of them being they want to see your face more often than a book, even though we like books and I'd much rather show you books because that would be my comfort zone. Doesn't matter if your face is there. And then the other question was whether there's been this new trend because of TikTok on Instagram that reels are no longer as popular and now we should just be doing more static posts.
Well, I can assure you, so I'll start with the second one first, because I think that's one of the things that is historically important, kind of the role I've played over the past 10 years. So one of the things that has happened, especially since 2016, when Facebook made a lot of changes, is that video is, except on Twitter, video is king. Video will always get you, in terms of advertising, for example, showing a static image is going to get you for $100. It's probably going to get maybe 1,500 people to see it, and maybe some nice engagement. The thing is, the cost per the CPM, which is the cost per thousand, is going to be, could be a couple $100. Whereas video, you can get a fraction of a penny for a view, for just one view, which is the first 3 to 5 seconds of your video. So video is not only always been cheaper on advertising, but also it's what Facebook has always promoted. If you go down your feed, you'll see a mix of static, but it's always going to be video that's going to get you the most views. A lot of news organizations have turned to video on Facebook. I came from an organization where we were doing Facebook on video, and we were making $1.2 million a year off monetization. And I've always been a fan of Facebook, of Meta, of the Meta system, and how they do video, because people aren't going to sit down. Our attention spans are terrible. TikTok has made this apparent with videos that are 15 seconds. People would much rather sit down and listen to a video in the background than sit down and read a book these days. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes when I'm deep in creative mode, I am listening to a video, whether it be something informational or a music video or that kind of playlist. So I would say that yes, static is important because it breaks it up, and the algorithm likes, and this is well-known knowledge, the algorithm likes a mix of both. The more you just simply post one, the more your algorithm will go towards that. And then one bad post, a video doesn't get a lot of watch, or a graphic doesn't get a lot of shares or comments or engagement, then it's going to hurt you a little bit more than it normally would. But then back to the question about your face. So a lot of authors are very uncomfortable putting their face up there. One of my favorite clients I work with, she was very, she in fact didn't have her Facebook profile picture was a copy of her old book for 2 or 3 years before I had to beg her to change it to her face so we could put a face to name. It was her name, but a book beside her name, which no one in the audience is going to engage as much. I can also tell you that I've seen studies and actually talked to people. I've worked with Facebook and Twitter internally before, with social media reps, advertising reps, and some of the people on the algorithm team, actually, some people who actually are the ones doing the mathematicians going there and coding and all that stuff. And on average, when you put your face on something, whether it be a graphic or a video, have a face on it, you're going to see a 15 to 30% increase in engagements and views alone. So there is absolutely studies out there. The last study, I believe, is from 2021, before COVID really hit and video really did take over, that showed that having your face on there is a huge benefit for you as the author talking to people, because people are going to listen more when someone's talking to them person to person. And you got to think of it like a conversation. Now we've obviously gone online with everything, but still it's a conversation. It's you explaining something to an audience and humanizing and putting a face behind it. It's going to do so much better than simply just showing pictures or a book cover.
Ben, I'm going to ask a question on behalf of you, Rebecca. Tied to this, she asked the question, what about boosting? Should you boost, and when? And what about being verified? Is it worth it? Absolutely.
Those are great questions. So I actually got my real big start in social media doing paid boosting and paid advertising. I at one point was one campaign alone was doing $400,000 a week in advertising for about 10 months. So I've spent the money on social media. I can tell you that I know that every person is different, but unfortunately, you do have to pay to play on Facebook. Paying is a good thing. Now, I wouldn't say just simply hitting the boost button. I would say that the boost button is great, but it's not the best at sitting there and determining, who you're targeting, who you're looking at, and kind of what you're doing. I would say that, just simply hitting the boost button is enough. You need to make sure that when you're going in the back end, you're targeting the people that would benefit. So if you boost, it's kind of like shooting a shotgun shell out into the open, but with targeting, you have a sniper rifle and you're hitting your group. So pay to play is exactly, unfortunately, how it goes. You do have to pay a little bit here and there. I myself have run several of my own Facebook pages and paid, $5 to $10 a day just to keep that engagement going, because the algorithm treats you better when you're getting engagement. It doesn't necessarily always, I guess I would say it doesn't necessarily always take into account you're paying for it, but the more engagement, the better. And if that's $5 to $10 a day on your page, that might be an actual benefit for you, because it also replaces the organic loss of followers. People, you see your numbers go up and down, but keeping that paid behind it, a couple dollars a day, actually really does do a good job of keeping you current and keeping the algorithm favoring your page.
Ben, Violet in New Zealand is asking a question. Violet, do you want to unmute and ask the question?
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Ben. Hey, this is just so informational and helpful. I'm really grateful for your time. And yeah, I'm working with a few different publishers who are recommending TikTok over Instagram, especially over Instagram for various reasons. And I've tried to look at TikTok and just sort of can't get behind it. And I'm just wondering your thoughts on that. I'm sure they're right in a lot of ways, because if you create a book talk, if it happens to go viral, it can certainly help your book. So
Absolutely.
just wondering if you have thoughts about TikTok.
Yes. So TikTok is always interesting for me because I have some safety concerns and some privacy concerns with TikTok. But that's beside that. The point, really, I just don't always trust TikTok. There's a lot of studies and things that have come out. But in terms of, your audience, there is some point to that, especially what is happening in a lot of publishing firms is they're looking less and less at Facebook, less and less at Instagram, and more at TikTok. And that's been a trend for the past couple of years now. And the thing about that is what they're doing, and kind of what you hear about is the coveted group, the 18 to 25 or 18 to 30 people that are going to, what they hope is, buy in and then become long-term customers. That's the whole point of that coveted demographic. And there is some conventional wisdom in that. And if you can become a force or popular or have a certain number of followers on X account, you'll be able to, and publishers thinking, sell books. That's exactly what they're trying to do. They're thinking, if I sign this person, if we go to publish, will they have a market to sell books? It's not just enough to say, oh, I have a bunch of friends on here who will, send it for me or share here, share there. You yourself also have to do the selling. You can't just rely solely on everyone else, unless you know Oprah. And if you do, please give me a call, because I would take you on as a client immediately. But it's they're trying to see they're testing you as a person to see how your audience and what your influence is like outside of your friend group, outside of your connections, and you're really trying to get down to that core. And so the issue is always with TikTok is obviously you're up against book talk, which is a very crowded area sometimes, that deals with both funny, hilarious, and spicy, to put it mildly. But also it does come down to, sometimes I've pushed back on publishers and gone, hey, but what is the audience here? For example, they came to me and said, we want your client to have, over 100,000 Instagram followers. And I said, okay, but let's look at what the book's doing. The book is talking to females who are the age of 50 who have, these struggles late in life. This person was writing about struggles in her, as she had older kids. And I said, the audience isn't, the coveted 18 to 30. It's going to be people who are her age and older. And where do we find that? We find that on Facebook. So we negotiated, and now we have a new goal to do Facebook followers instead of TikTok followers. So I would argue that, yes, there is a lot of value to TikTok having that younger audience. I would also caution, though, because a lot of 18 to 25-year-olds don't have the disposable income sometimes for that extra book, etc. But it really is about knowing your audience and working with the publisher to find a mutual beneficiary thing there. Because I would say that some people, especially people who are over a certain age, and like, not to be insulting, but over a certain age, that's not their target demographic, is not going to be TikTok. Just because some books are meant to be read by people or have an audience that's maybe a little bit older. So I would say look at what your goal is, talk to the publisher, work back and forth, and see what a reasonable goal is. Because also just having large numbers on social media doesn't also mean it's going to sell all the time either. So I'm encouraging you also to push back on that, if that makes sense.
That's great. I'm going to ask a question on behalf of Kristen, who's a little under the weather in California. She's asking, do you find Instagram comment to DM automation tools effective, and any tips for best practices with them? Some authors use them, and I'm interested in trying it out. Would also love to hear your
Absolutely.
thoughts on the benefits, drawbacks of using a tool like this.
Yes. So a lot of the times when I've used that, it's for nonprofits. I've never really used it with an actual individual. I would say that raw, fresh engagement is best. I would say maybe it is possible, and you could use that if you have the time and skills necessary to set that up or work with it. It's definitely a good way to make sure that you are engaging with your fans. But I think that's more of a personal issue on time constraint and what you're trying to do. I would say it's always good to engage with the comments, always, especially if they're trolling. Don't be disrespectful. Don't ignore disrespectful people, because that does happen sometimes, and people just like to be mean online because they've lost their personality. But I would say that is an individual choice. I would say it depends on your audience size, how many comments you're getting. If you have a large audience and being overwhelmed, absolutely. If you think it's worth investing in that and looking at that, but I'll say, if you have 100 followers, I would not recommend it, because, you have 100 followers, but if you have a million followers, absolutely, it's worth it, because you can kind of see and engage and see what's going on. So that one would be more of what's your audience size and like what are your time constraints. I don't want people getting tools. I've seen a lot of tools that are very expensive. I don't want people getting tools that they don't have the budget for it, or if they are able to kind of more maintain it. I used to tell one client in particular, kind of the 15,000 followers. There's a lot of comments, but do you want to have your inbox constantly going off, your DMs constantly going off, or would you rather just spend 10 minutes a day perusing, looking through the comments very quickly, finding a few and responding to them? So it really is, that one is more of I can't evaluate that one unless I would know your situation.
Kathy from Kentucky is asking, do these social media best practices work the same regarding fiction and nonfiction? Are there different applications there on category or genre?
That's a great question. So when I talk about best practices for authors, I'm talking about all authors. I don't, there might be some slight variations between the two, but I would say, based on the research that I've read and done in the past few years on this, is that when it comes to authors and the separation between fiction and nonfiction, the nonfiction has a little bit of advantage, especially if there's stories that are interesting besides it. There's that part of it, but the fiction also does if there's a personal story behind it. So, you can kind of separate those two out in different ways. But I'd say overall, these are best practices for pretty much every author that you can probably talk to. And every social media person would tell you probably about the same thing.
We are going to run out of time, because I really like to honor the 45-minute schedule for these calls. So if you have a question, a burning question, email me that question and we will get it in front of Ben. Ben, tell us about how do I do this now? Yeah, okay, good.
Oh, sorry, I just stopped sharing.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Tell us a little bit about your company that's on here, if you can see my behind me. Tell us about your company and how people can reach you.
Absolutely. So I will be sending Don, I have few other slides on this, so I'll be sending you that'll have all my contact information on there. But my company is called Vandalay Publishing. Do we have any Seinfeld fans in the room? Okay. So yes, so I'm very involved with my family. I'm a very, family is really important to me. Both personal family and the chosen family aspect we have too. I have about when I moved up to Washington, D.C., right after I graduated college. I was very fortunate to have about 5 or 6 really strong friends up there that are my chosen family in D.C. And so family's always been important to me. And when I was in high school, and if anyone's from like North Carolina is where I'm from, so the South, TBS, Turner Broadcasting Systems, used to play both Atlanta Braves games and then reruns of the show Seinfeld. And if you're obsessed with Seinfeld, we're going to be best friends. I saw your comment, Kyle. But I am a huge fan of Seinfeld. And so Vandelay Industries, obviously from George Costanza. And then Vandelay Industries is unfortunately already taken. But obviously the publishing side, because Elaine was a publisher and worked for Pendant Publishing. If anyone remembers that trivia fact. So I combined the two to Vandelay Publishing. And my dad is really proud of me for that. He's a huge Seinfeld fan. I have every episode memorized. But it was also just something that my brother and I have an older brother who lives in Nashville, Tennessee. And he and I and my dad would all watch that kind of together while my mom was cooking dinner. And then once dinner was about to be served, she'd come in and would and watch it with us. My sister was a little bit too young to watch it, but she would usually be doing homework as well. But it was something that we all kind of came around. And my firm is the idea of bringing those people together. I work with some middle of the road political clients as well. I've been, my dad ran for office when I was 16. I was campaign manager. So always kind of middle of the road, different walks, different people I'm passionate about. But my goal is to bring people together, to network together. Kind of, Don, I think these calls are great that you do, because this is kind of eventually what I'll be rolling into, is doing something very similar to this. Is kind of the goal at the end. But living in Washington, D.C. and seeing everything up close that you guys hear about on the news, and I know that some people probably in this call live in the area as well. It's pretty divided right now, and it's tough to be in a place where you can try to make a difference. So even if it's and it's so hard to make a difference sometimes in DC, because you're up against 6 million other people who have different ideas. So bringing people together, working with them, treating them with human dignity, and making sure that we have mutual respect, working together. I love my clients because not only am I learning about them, but they also at the same time learn about what I do on social media. I'm very open with what I'm doing, how it works. I talk to them like I talk to you guys. This is why we're doing this. A lot of analysis behind it. So that's my goal, is to make sure that come someday they decide they want to part and go try it on their own. I'm sitting there, I'll be their biggest fan. So yeah.
So the website is www. Ben, fill in the blank for me.
Oh, it's www.vandelaypublishing.com.
Okay.
And
I was just trying to avoid people emailing Jerry Seinfeld about it.
I think he might be a bit busier than me, but I'll promise you I'll respond before Jerry responds.
Cool. So again, if you have questions, email me. I'll make sure they get in front of Ben, and we'll get those answered for you. Ben, this has been great. Always good to see you.
Always good to see you again, Don.
Source of lots of knowledge, lots of information, and really appreciate you giving us this time today.
Absolutely. And once he gives you that information, guys, happy to jump on a call, talk to you guys at a high level, and work with you guys in some way. I hope to see all of you guys in my email the next couple days. I am vacationing, but I'm available. So thanks again, Don. I really appreciate it. We've been looking forward to this since we scheduled it. Thanks again, guys. And if you have any questions, please reach out.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
I did not want today's segment to go without acknowledging Jubilee Day, or as the government in Colorado has said, Juneteenth. And I asked Kathy, who wrote a wonderful little novel called Liddell and Jubilant, to share a little bit about what Juneteenth means to her. Kathy?
Thank you. Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Don said you have 3 or 4 minutes, so I wrote it down. So I'd be careful to stay within that time frame. So I just want to, obviously, Juneteenth, a day that commemorates June 19th, 1865, when those enslaved in Galveston, Texas, learned that they were indeed free, right? More than two years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. So I just think today, I know you must be thinking like, well, what are you, you're a middle-aged or a little older, white woman. This is history for all of us to remember, right? And to honor and to, um, there's no, what is that? There's nothing new under the sun. Like there's no new evil under the sun, right? And when we think about the evils of slavery and just have this day to remember this particular event, I think is really important. So, and I was thinking through Juneteenth, and I just thought, man, what a difference. 2.5 years. I know when people were emancipated, it was a process, right? It didn't just, for most, didn't just happen. It was a process for them to gain their freedom. But what a difference 2.5 years could have made for those slaves in Galveston had they known the truth of their situation, right? If they were free, yet without that knowledge, they continue to live in bondage. So I'm currently reading a chapter book to my 7-year-old grandson that he chose, and it's on the Underground Railroad. So it obviously highlights Harriet Tubman, but actually it highlights quite a few other personal, real stories, amazing, astonishing stories of some slaves who successfully escaped their masters via the Underground Railroad. And after very difficult, harrowing journeys, really across the board, none of it was easy. They made it, to a free state or to Canada, where they were able to live in freedom. And once they were free, I loved learning about what they did with that freedom. Like so many of them accomplished great things. And so I just thought, can you imagine how thrilled yet outraged those slaves in Galveston must have felt when they learned that they had been freed for 2 years, over 2 years, but such news had never reached them. So I get Don asked me to share about this, just my thoughts on it. And he said, and you can do a shameless plug. So, and I thought, you know what? It's totally shameless. Not that I wrote the greatest American novel by any means, and yet my story, Liddell and Jubilant, highlights, it's woven in there, the life of George Washington Carver, who I'm sure you've heard of him as the Peanut Man and all this, but there's just some really rich, this was a man of great faith, of great, amazing accomplishments, and his character is noteworthy. And so I was able to weave him into this book. And so I just think, part of what we do today is we honor slaves in general. We honor this history that is awful. And of course, by at least one thing that we can do today is just to think on these things, think on these horrors, really, of slavery, but also to learn about some of their stories. And so George Washington was born a slave, and then what his life went on to, what he was able to accomplish because he was free. So I just think that's one way we can honor and really think through this day is by learning some real stories. And so I hope that you will. Here's my, where's Ben? Here's my live shot of me with my book. I hope that you will pick it up and be willing to read it, and maybe you'll learn something new about George Washington Carver. But just in general, just learn about some of these real life stories. I think it's honoring and it's important.
So good. So good. Thanks, Kathy. Great little story. Jubilant is a delightful character in the book, as well as George Washington Carver. So they're all great people. I want to tell you about next month because two things. One, next month we're going to meet at 10:30 to accommodate Sally Kim's schedule. Sally Kim is coming to us. She has worked in publishing for over 20 years. She is the publisher at Little Brown and Company, and I think you'll enjoy our time with her. She will be doing sharing a lot as a person in publishing, and hope you will join me. The other thing I want to remind you of is to look for an email that I sent out a while back about a Google Doc survey that Callie Murray did. And Callie's collecting a bunch of data about us. Callie, if you're still on, do you want to unmute and just remind people of it? We sent it out in an email. Go ahead, Callie.
Yeah, for sure. It's just a Google Doc where if you wanted to put in your information and ways to follow along your work or ways to support you, the thought was just we've got such a cool group of folks here. We might as well know a little bit more about what we're doing and help each other out.
Cool. Thank you, Callie. We went over time, but you all had some great questions. Thank you so much for joining me for the month of June. Hope to see you in July. Hope you have a safe rest of your day and that you are cool wherever you may be. I know there's a hot air something that was happening in this country. So stay safe, stay healthy. Good to see you all. Bye now.